Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining our masterclass webinar series. And the title of this presentation, of course, is the effective navigation through NDPR roadblocks. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. I'll basically be walking through the format of this webinar and then gradually hand over to our distinguished panelists who are part of this. Our format is as follows. We'll be going through perspectives on data protection, after which there'll be a brief introduction of the panelists, and then we'll walk through our question format in which there'll be 4 quick questions that will be addressed, and we'll move on after that to a demo of Data Privacy Manager, our unique tool that's used for dealing with some of the roadblocks. After that, there will be a question and answer section, and there will be also the results of our poll. Now, in between the questions from the panelists and prior to the demo, the polls will appear on your screen. So please feel free to take part. There are 3 of them, short, simple questions, no right, no wrong. We just want to hear what your thoughts and perspectives are. So moving on, I'd like to start this session by thanking you once again for joining us, and then just quickly going through our perspectives. As you may well know, Africa has tended to be a stepping stone or a pit where a lot of technology is introduced. Now, by that I mean technology that is both redundant and in some cases a bedrock or simply a launch pad for technology just to see how it worked out. In some cases, this has worked perfectly, and in some other cases it hasn't. Case in question being obviously the 2017 episode, which I'm sure you've all been privileged to hear about with regards to Cambridge Analytics, where there were some questionable techniques and tactics that were used in the context of some elections. As we know, throughout the course of 2020, a number of African countries, about 20 of them to be specific, will have had some form of election in or some form of states or regional elections. What is the valuable asset within that is the data. So the data of the bus driver or the food seller or the civil servant is all valuable commodity. However, that has not been harnessed to its true potential by African countries, and the fact that we always somehow lag behind during the course of our endeavors. However, there's progress that has been made, but before then, obviously, we have to look at the way in which this progress has been made. So the onset of the European GDPR has brought on a lot of good things and a lot of challenges, and is that has served as a blueprint for African countries and African data protection agencies to take a lead. More recently, Nigeria introduced in 2019 its data protection regulation, and as a consequence of that, a lot of companies and entities had to take things a bit more seriously. So the days of bits of paper now winding up in redundant corners of buildings or in boxes could no more be taken lightly. A lot of companies are still trying to get to grips with the potential of data as an asset, and in some quarters it's been quietly muted as the new oil. But what do we know about all this data, or what do we do with it? What do we mean to the average company as a data subject? Do we understand why our data is being collected? Do we understand why our names, date of births, preferences in life and choices specific to what can be collected are used? How are they used? How are they managed? To take us through this webinar, we're going to be focusing on some key questions, by a distinguished panelist. And this will basically give all of us an insight, we hope, at the end of this, as to why and how things are. Moving on, I would like to introduce our panelists. And before then, I'll talk about the companies that are involved indirectly. DataWorks Analytics is a small entity in Nigeria, but privileged entity. And for us, it's pretty much about the data. We basically see DataWorks basically secures, protects, and adds value to your data, to your asset. Marriott Consulting Nigeria, basically lives and breathes data privacy. And then, of course, there's a data privacy manager under the auspices of Poslovna Inteligentia, who have provided for 20 years in the field of creating data-driven solutions for clients worldwide. First of our panelists is Ade Adedeji. At DataWorks, Ade is responsible as the Chief Privacy and Data Protection Officer for strategic direction of data practice, which is focused on tackling the growing data challenges of leading organizations in the African market. Prior to joining DataWorks, he managed regulatory compliance and data governance projects for large blue-chip organizations in Europe, assisting them on their journey towards becoming GDPR, DPA 2018 and CCPA compliant. I won't introduce myself. I'll let you just merely look at my profile. It would be unfair for me to talk too much about myself. I can come back to that later. Olufemi Ogundere is the CEO of Marriott Nigeria, and Olu is the managing partner, CEO of Marriott Nigeria Limited. Is an IT and data privacy consultancy, one of Nigeria's leading data protection compliance organizations licensed by NIDA, of course. Olu is a solutions architect, an IT practitioner, and a certified data protection officer, a certified information system auditor, and a certified information system manager, as well as a certified Scrum manager and an Agile project manager. Marian Bracic is a data privacy director at Poslovna Inteligentia, where he has been working for the last 10 years leading complex projects in the telecom and financial industry, as well as an architect on projects for the introduction of analytical systems and intelligent data protection. Today, he's the product owner of Data Privacy Manager, a comprehensive privacy solution for effective personal data management. Our first question, which I'll open to our panelists, now that you have become acquainted with them, will be the one that is at the forefront of everybody's mind. How do I start the journey? And by journey, I mean the journey into data protection management. So I'll open the floor to Ade and Femi. If you'd like to, either of you start the journey for us, please. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. And thanks for joining this webinar once again. Before I go into what I want to talk about, I just want to quickly highlight a few things that are very, very important. The regulatory landscape, particularly in data protection around the world, as Joe mentioned, is changing. Also, even within Nigeria as well, we have the NDPR that was introduced in January of 2019. And also, there's a data protection bill that has been discussed, has been issued, has been reviewed, or is in the process of being reviewed at the moment and will soon to be passed. So the landscape is constantly changing. It's constantly changing. And that means when you want to get on a journey, it's sometimes very hard for you to understand how to navigate this journey and how to start effectively. So because the landscape is constantly changing, one of the things in which I think will be a good way to start is for you to understand the journey. So for every organization, you need to understand what NDPR means, what data protection means, and the best thing to do to get this understanding is to maybe engage the data protection compliance organization, which is an organization that is been licensed by NDPR, who are the regulators, to help organizations with their compliance activities. That's something that it's very important, because they will help you to shape and be able to define what that journey is going to be for you. So for every journey, you need to have a destination, and they will help you to carve out that destination. So another thing in which the data protection compliance organization can help you to do is to carve out a strategy. You need to know how you want to get to where you want to get to, and because your strategy and your goal will be something which are going to be used to help you to mobilize your stakeholders and also to engage the people within the organization. So good things to include in that strategy or your roadmap is what your outcomes. What do you want out of your strategy? Good things to include is, as an outcome, is that you want to reduce your risks that are associated with compliance, things like reputational damage. I think costs. Cost is a big one, because a lot of people always talk about the cost of fines and all that, but the truth of the matter is that there are lots of hidden costs that are associated with breaches. Costs to fix issues, costs to pay legal fees for people who are suing you, or even to engage legal professionals and data protection experts. So your costs are easily escalate. So another good outcome is ensuring that you want to move on that journey of compliance, and you want to ensure that data protection is rolled out across your organization. It's also good to know what the benefits are to the organization, because people are always talking about fines, but also having a good data protection roadmap will include things like helping you to improve your customer and employee satisfaction, even improve your reputation in the market, as well as help you to save money. I think I've done enough there, and I'll hand over to Mr. Ogundere, who is a DPCO, to round up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ade. Thanks a lot for that. You've astutely explained the journey for data protection. I'd just like to add on to that. Basically, your starting point for your business when it comes to NDPR or data protection is to know your existing relationship with people's personal data. And when we talk about people's personal data, we're talking about what data your organization collects today, the medium in which they collect the data, or how the data is used, where it is used, who you share the data with, and what current data protection framework you have in place. And this varies from organization to organization. The fact that you're in the oil industry or you're in the finance industry does not mean your strategy for data protection will be the same. It doesn't mean you have a blueprint, because you guys do the same business. So what I explained earlier on are the factors and things you need to look at. Where your data comes in, what kind of data you process, how you process it, and where it is used, and who you share the data with. So without taking too much of your time, this is just to add on to what Ade has explained on the journey to starting on data protection. Thank you. Joe, over to you, Joe.
For that, and I hope that has given all of us a little bit of an idea in terms of a perspective of how the journey does start. I guess at the end of the day, every journey has to have a beginning, but with the data protection management, it's obviously critical for people to understand where the starting point is. Moving on to our second question, this is one where we sort of take things a little bit closer to the decision makers within the organization. So how should stakeholders be mobilized in an organization? By that, I would think normally going straight to a director. But I would again defer to either Ade or Femi to again offer their insights as to how stakeholders should be mobilized in our organization.
Okay, thanks for that, Joe. I actually like this question because I like the word mobilize. How do you mobilize stakeholders in your organization? The compliance or regulatory compliance, such as the data protection compliance journey, involves the entire organization. Because in most organizations, every function will handle either some personal data of either their clients, their patients, even their colleagues or other employees. So when it comes to mobilizing, it's always best to start from the top. The responsibility of data protection and compliance is a shared one, but the people at the top own the bulk of the responsibility. So you need to engage your chief executive, your senior leaders. And as I said earlier on, once you have sort of a strategy document that highlights the things like the benefits, the issues, what you're trying to address, your goals, it's very, very easy for you to sell the idea and to explain to people why they need to get a start of that journey of complying with the regulation. So start at the top. And also for those who have already started and already began the journey, it's always important also for you to have someone like a champion, someone like a previous champion, who is also a senior executive in the organization, who will have responsibility for ensuring the organization complies to regulations like NDPR, the Data Protection Bill of 2020 when it's enacted, and other regulations like GDPR that might impact or affect the organization. And of course, I come from a very good structured environment or background using structured methodologies. And it's also very good for you to engage or have a cross-functional team because this compliance is going to involve the whole organization. And if you have a cross-functional team of people working alongside with the previous champion or the previously NDPR champion, they'll be able to help in delivering and mobilizing the stakeholders.
Thanks for that, Ade. Femi, would you like to elaborate some more, please?
Yes, I will. As a DPCO and also as an experienced data privacy expert, which have worked in various blue chip companies all over Europe and also in Nigeria, mobilizing stakeholders, right? First, you have to identify your stakeholder. And there are 3 steps to doing that. Like I said, the first one is identifying the stakeholders and their interest in the project, either it's positive or negative. Secondly, assessing the influence and the importance and the level of impact of each stakeholder. And lastly, identifying how best to engage the stakeholders. Okay, when we talk about stakeholders, we talk from the top to the bottom. And in every organization, it's not necessarily the ED or the CEO that's the main stakeholder, right? Like I said, anybody involved in making a decision regarding the data regulation or protection regulation is a stakeholder in the company. Some believe that GDPR that should be led by the Chief Information Officer, the CIO, or the Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO, like they call it in some companies. But not necessarily. Like I said, some companies might just have a data protection officer who is regulating and making sure or managing the data process in the company and make sure everybody aligns and everybody's compliant. Like I said, so what matters most is getting the buy-in from the stakeholders, identifying them, understanding their impact and influence. And once you get the buy-in, then it's easy now for the flow of making sure data protection is implemented in the company. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Femi. And moving on to our third question. This probably will have different connotations for different people, depending on obviously what parts of the globe they reside. Now, we're all familiar with roadblocks in the European sense, but within Africa, I'm sure roadblocks obviously have a different connotation. By roadblocks in this case, I don't necessarily mean a traffic roadblock, although it could draw certain parallels. I mean basically challenges that an individual or companies might face, or anybody trying to pursue data protection management in a more positive way. But to basically kick this off, I mean, who would obviously like to offer their insights? And this is open to any of you three gentlemen. Mayan, would you like to give us your perspective from a European perspective, please?
Of course, sure, Joe. And thank you for the question. Good day, everybody. Well, let me try to answer. I can say that I was lucky enough to be in the front rows of GDPR enforcement in the European Union. And let me answer the question from that perspective. So looking at the process through different phases from the very beginnings of the enforcement up until today, which is 2.5 years later. So what are the roadblocks there? Some would argue and say that data protection by itself is a roadblock for the business. However, I would always counter and say that data protection is the road, not the roadblock. The future will be defined in a very important way by how we do data protection all around the world. And privacy must not be a thing of the past, and we should all fight for it and give our contribution. So NDPR, GDPR, and other regulations will probably refresh, revitalize, and sometimes completely change models of business operations and customer engagements and data-led transformations, and it should be a good thing. So I would say that the biggest roadblock has been the need to change, and it has been different for different types of organizations, depending on the industry and their risk maturity. Where we have seen industries like banking, communication, healthcare, media, in the front rows trying to prepare themselves for the upcoming changes in the data protection regulation. And for them, the biggest roadblocks were, and for some of them still are, the lack of privacy culture within the company, not understanding the new rules and how they should be applied to the business processes, changing established bad data practices, especially in sales and marketing, and of course, lack of proper security and privacy tools. And for less risk mature organizations, it is still lack of focus on data protection, as we see there a wide range of behavior, from those who just wait and watch what others, including their competition, will do, to those extremes where companies have deleted large volumes of personal data and started collecting them again with proper consent processes in place. You know, they just deleted everything. Crazy. So nevertheless, risks for not having a focus on data protection is immense, as we have seen millions and millions of fines in the EU, and not only for data breaches and in general the lack of security measures, but also for not having privacy processes in place. For example, for not having proper consents or not deleting customer data in time. And as I have mentioned, one of the big roadblocks in the beginning is the lack of focus on data protection. I would also add there a lack of knowledge. Employees in the organization should understand that data protection is both data security and data privacy. And if the organization is a house where you would keep valuable stuff like customer personal data, you need to take care of the security, right? So you should lock the doors and windows on your house. Once it's all locked and bolted, how do you protect the privacy? Well, you put the curtains over all the windows. Don't let nobody see the data. It's valuable and it's private. So people sharing their data with the organization have the right to have privacy. And the final roadblock I will mention is the lack of proper tools to do data protection in the right way. So we have seen this as a big problem, and we have been trying to help our customers ever since by giving them the right tool for the job. And you know, we have seen the attempts of keeping everything in one Excel sheet, and there is an old saying that if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything starts looking as a nail. But Excel is not a data protection tool, and the organization deciding to use Excel eventually end up building bigger and bigger spreadsheets with no real risk mitigation and with weak data protection processes in place. So I'm going to do a demonstration of Data Privacy Manager today and hopefully be able to show a little bit of what we can do to help companies on this journey.
Thank you very much for that,
Back to
Ryan.
you.
Thank you very much. Would Femi or Ade care to offer a brief additional comments on that roadblock from the African perspective, please?
I'll just comment on that from an African perspective. So because NDPR and it's still relatively new within Nigeria, and data protection is still relatively new across the African across Africa. The biggest roadblocks in which we found to date is to do with people. People don't understand what you're trying to do. They don't understand what the benefits are. People are going to resist change. People are going to try to sabotage your efforts. So the people element is huge, because remember, you're trying to roll out a program that's dealing with data of your personal data that people have entrusted you with. But they don't understand, what you're trying to do. So also another important roadblock is budgets. Because people don't understand what you're trying to do, there's often no budget for it, and without a budget, you're not going to be able to go far with what you're trying to do. So it's important that you try and secure the budget to support you in what you're trying to do, and finally. Have a good plan. It's not only about completing an audit report and filing an audit report. It's about working on a journey of compliance and continuously improving your level of compliance and reducing your risks that have been identified to ensure that you reduce the level of trust in which your customers, your consumers, your employees have given to you by giving you your data, that you value that trust and you value that relationship.
Thank you very much for that, Ade. Thank you. Just to paraphrase, ladies and gentlemen, as we have seen, the roadblocks vary from region to region, but as Ade highlighted, people sometimes are part of the roadblocks, ASA, obviously a budget, and obviously the biggest one is knowledge. A lack of awareness or lack of knowledge can also be a hindrance. As Marian, I beg your pardon, clearly highlighted earlier on, having all your data boxed up, locked up, and even the curtains drawn is sometimes not enough. Deferring to an Excel spreadsheet and stacking reams and reams of it makes it obviously even more riskier. But as we'll see from hopefully our next question, and as we go through this webinar, initially we'll basically be able to tease out a few points, which brings on up to our next question. How do I effectively overcome these challenges? Now, to answer this, of course, again, I'll put it to our very distinguished panelists. Who would like to take a stab at this one? Femi, you want to have a go, please?
Well, okay, I'll talk briefly, because hoping Maya will do this for us because of this tool, which is very important. But like I'll say a bit, when both of them were talking earlier on about the biggest roadblocks and everything, I also want to, the most important thing, like you rightly said, and Joe, is awareness. And once the awareness is there, everybody understands the risks, they understand the danger, they understand the problems that we face. Obviously, enforcement too should come into play, where once they know the punishment, because nothing is law until it's been enacted. So people don't care. They're like, oh, what will happen if I do this? What will happen if I do that? But once they know the punishment or the enforcement involved, people take it more seriously. And like like we're trying to portray here, the biggest data privacy concern, which people do not understand, that can damage any company. First and foremost, identity theft, online tracking and target marketing, abuse of biometric information. A lot of people who give their information for biometric and everything, abuse of that. People sell information, sell data here and there. You find your data everywhere. Even cameras, CCTVs in company. All these things are part of privacy concerns. Location tracking, social media reach. So there's a lot of data breach that are committed through all these means, and this is why we need to tackle this issue with various softwares. Like Maya said, it's not just stacking things in Excel, putting things in Word documents, but there has to be a tool. There has to be something that we can introduce to put all these things in check and make sure things are done smoothly and seamlessly. So on that note, I give the floor open to Ade if he has anything to add on to that.
Thank you very much, Femi. I think Maya, sorry, Ade, you were going to say something. If you'd like to offer a brief insight before I defer to Maya, of course.
Just to support what has been said, really. And I keep going back to when you're trying to go through your roadblocks and how do you overcome these challenges. So when it comes to people, because people for me is a big thing. You need to ensure you engage the right stakeholders, engage the DPCO, and you need to also communicate. Communication is the biggest thing. Communicate what your issues are, what the risks are, what the benefits are. Communicate your plan as to how you want to take your organization on this journey. I think that's very important for you to mobilize your stakeholders as well. As Femi said, training and awareness. Training and awareness is actually also one of the things that is mandated by the organization. Also, you need to ensure that if you look at it from a process, a people, process, technology, and data perspective, you can't go wrong. So you have your people, you have your processes. You're going to have processes to deliver your program. The program is also going to have to introduce some new processes within your organization. And also, technology is an important part. You have to learn. You can't have privacy and security without using technology. You need to leverage technology to ensure you are able to secure the data in which you has been entrusted with you to protect. And then data. Once you start to see your data as an asset, and that data in which you hold on your files on your databases, it has a lot of value. The mindset of the organization will change.
Thank you very much, Maya. And if you'd like to summarize for us, please.
How I see it, and I agree with everything said so far. I think that the first thing the organization should do, the people working on the data protection journey, is to find the right motivation, right? It can't only be fines, even though, fines were invented to be an effective tool for mobilization, but there is other benefits for the organization in the long run when doing data protection properly. And if I would need to summarize the points which can be used to effectively overcome the roadblocks, I would say it's privacy culture, it's employee education, it's privacy program management, including privacy risk management, and it's proper tools. So, collecting the data today, processing the data, exposing the data, sharing the data, it's all done through technology. So we also need technology to properly secure both on the security and on the privacy side. And looking in the future, it is going to be more and more difficult to do that in the right way, because technology is always evolving and progressing. So we who work on the privacy and data protection side, technology wise, we are trying always to catch up and be on the edge of the technology, and this is very important, I think. So what I'm going to do next is, of course, Joe, when you will hand me over the presentation rights, I'm going to show a little bit around our tool, Data Privacy Manager, because when we talk about the tool, then we can start talking about operationalization of specific challenges and specific solutions. And I think starting from the beginning, companies, organizations need to come at the point where it becomes little small problems that can actually be solved and where everything is managed and tracked in one place. And then they are doing data protection continuously and in the right way.
Thank you very much for your insights, Marian, and I hope we have also benefited from that. Moving on swiftly, though, just to remind people that there is going to be a poll, series of questions I mentioned before, which I hope you've been able to have a look at. So please offer your answers and incentives and direction on that, so that we can basically give you our results afterwards. Handing over back to Marian, if you'd like to obviously walk us through the Data Privacy Manager demo, please, for the benefit of our attendees. Thank you very much.
Okay, so what I'm going to do in the next like 10 to 15 minutes is I'm going to do a short demonstration of Data Privacy Manager, which is a privacy management platform and the software that we have developed and are continuously working on it, and it actually is helping our customers on the data protection journey, and it's helping them solve all those little problems and challenges that will appear along the line. Okay, so what you can see now is the Data Privacy Manager Application Center, and as it is a modular platform, it has different solutions for different types of challenges. And let me just show you around the tool. We have here a fictional company which is called the Great Nigerian People's Bank. We have also the loan and the mortgage company. And I have here the data processing inventory, which is kind of a central register for tracking and managing everything that is happening in terms of data processing or personal data processing, in terms of where the processing is taking place. So for example, I can see here now that the most of our data processing is happening in Nigeria, but actually we do have like something in Croatia as well, something in Germany, and we have some processing done in the United States. And we can of course see why the processing is being done, what is the role of the bank in this processing, if there are any third parties, etc., etc. So if I were to look at the list of all the processing that a bank is doing, I will get a list of activities, which are, some of them are connected obviously to day-to-day operations, some of them are connected to the employee data processing, so human resources, some of which is marketing and sales. And let me just quickly open the use of data for internal audit purposes, which is one of the processing activities, of course. And the most important thing that the tool does here, I would say, is it forces the organization to define the activity owners here, which can be one person or a team of people. And basically for this processing, I am the business owner. So I am responsible, not the DPO or the Chief Information Security Officer. I'm responsible as the business person here to keep it up to date and to do the risk assessments as well. So we have here some documents attached. We can see that the Great Nigerian People's Mortgage Company is the data controller. We can also see the purpose of the processing. We can see that Marie Consulting is the data processor here. So they are in the role of the processor, and they are exchanging data with manually, because it's an audit process, right? So then we can check the systems where the data is actually being processed. So I can see that the CRM is a storage use system here, etc., etc. So there is a lot of information that you actually need to keep track of. And the alternative to using a tool such as data privacy manager is to keep it in an Excel sheet, which is not a long-term solution, right? So because we have here, for example, data retention, and in this case, for this specific activity, that there is a limited data retention, which is 11 years. So meaning that there is a law which obligates the bank to keep this financial data for 11 years. And so on and so on. So we have a lot of different activities here. We have different owners of these activities, and the bank is in different roles depending on the activity of data processing. We also have the risks here. So I can see that for the marketing activities, we do have a potential risk of a data breach, and I can see that the impact is high if it happens, and the probability is credible here. So this is very serious. We should definitely have the risk owner defined. We should see the mitigation measures, and then the organization can centrally track all the risks that were raised and their status. Also, what I think is important is that the risk assessments can be done centrally and stored centrally in the software. So talking, for example, about data protection impact assessments or legitimate interest assessment. And also we have a list of all the systems here, which are either registered or where the registration is pending. So we have the human resources platform, we have the scanned passport archive, which is a physical archive. It's not an IT system, for example, but we also do have the IT systems like the CRM, social media platforms. And then we have the big data system, which obviously has a risk assigned here as well. And the risk it has the risk score of 15, the likelihood is remote, but the impact if the data breach happens is very high. So I will just quickly move on from the data processing inventory to the risk register and show you quickly how actually each organization can edit and configure the risk methodology, which is a very important thing. Because when we do develop the software, we get a lot of customer feedback, and this is one of the things that is very important for the companies. So it is very important for them to have a custom number of impact and likelihood levels, and then to be able to define their own risk scores, and also being able to manage or change the look and feel of the risk matrix itself. And then once the levels are defined, then they can basically define how the risk scores are applied in this matrix. And once they do so, and once this is published, they can then assign risks to different entities within the software. So just fast forwarding now, because what I was showing you is like the metadata level. So these are all different registers and methodologies that can be used in the software. So once we do all of that, for example, what we can do is we can also do the consent management and data flows, where we actually keep track of the real data, where we have the personal information, and where we manage all that we know and all that we do with personal data of an individual. So I will just quickly search for John Otto, which I can see that he has some consents here. But what I can also see, I can see the 360-degree view of John, where I can see what kind of consents we have. I can see the history of his consents. I can also see his data here. So we have the name, email information, company, address information, phone, passport number, tax identification number, and so on. I can see that he's a customer as well, and I can see that his data is being processed in 3 different systems, and I can see the identifiers here as well. And this is very important to being able to automate any data protection and data privacy process down the stream, because this is the central privacy management platform. And maybe one additional thing I could show in this short time is once we do have all of this information within the software, and once we want to give the individuals the opportunity to be able to manage their privacy settings and their privacy preferences on their own. So what we need to do, we need to give them access to what we call the privacy portal, which is an out-of-the-box web application and is meant to be used by the individuals themselves. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just use a temporary hashed link as John, which I was showing you before previously, and I will see what John says here. So John says the collected information about him. John can see if there are any requests that are being handled by the bank, and he can also submit new requests here. So in this case, send me my personal information, so right to access data. It could also be right to be forgotten or right to erase data. And also he can see that he has opted in for trial access, but there is also some other thing that he can opt in for. So for example, third-party marketing. And before I do that opt-in, let me just show you centrally from the organization perspective in the Data Privacy Manager. If I would go to the dashboard of the consent process and actually look at the third-party marketing, I could see that there are 22 consents. And now when the individual, being John, actually opts in for the third-party marketing, now the organization should immediately, let me just switch the screens, immediately see that it's not 22 anymore, it's 23, and so on and so on. So the idea is to have everything in one central place, connected with the systems, connected with the data, which is the most important thing, and then being able to track the life cycle of data, to track the data processing activities, all the information important for the data protection and privacy, being able to do the risk management, all from one central place, giving the tool to the right people in the company, and promoting collaboration between different roles. So Joe, can I hand it over to you now?
Thank you very much for that brief but insightful presentation on Data Privacy Manager. And moving on to the audience, if you have any questions, please endeavor to type them onto your panel on the right-hand side, and we'll be willing to read them out for the benefit of our panelists, or with a bit of support from our project support. If anybody wants to ask a specific question, I'm sure we can obviously facilitate that as well. Thank you very much, and I'm opening the floor to anyone who has any questions. Anybody have any questions at this point in time?
I think there's a question that came in, which I answered, and it talked about which member of the organization has a 360 view of that customer data. So Marian, the customer data in the database, when you are trying to show the consent,
Sure.
who will have access to that data?
Sure. So the access to the data depends on the role and the permissions given in the application, and it's I would say, if you think about who has access to what, it's very much in the line of role level security, where some of the roles with appropriate permissions, for example, can see all the consent-based data, while the privacy role can, for example, see all the information about the individual, helping them, solve any requests or ask for any help or raise any tickets with the IT. So basically, it depends on the roles, where, for example, HR will only see the HR information, marketing will only see the consent information, and privacy most likely will see all of the information about a customer.
Thank you very much, Marian. I think there was another question from Franklin, just a brief question, is basically asking if DPM is cloud-based. Thanks for that question, Franklin.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It is cloud-based, but it can as well be installed on premises. So it can be both ways.
Thanks for that. And then there's a question here, again, that has come in. Basically, does the software have any triggers to mitigate breach? Does the software have any triggers to mitigate breach?
Yeah, this is not a security software in that sense, because the data privacy manager as a software is a central place to keep track of all those information, including data breaches or any type of incidents. It can be integrated with service ticketing systems, service order management. However, its purpose is not to secure the systems. Its purpose is to enable privacy management, risk management, and keep all the information in one central place, promoting collaboration between different roles. So one of the roles will definitely be security. And if there is a risk raised for the system saying security controls are not enough on the system A, then it will be visible in Privacy Manager, in Data Privacy Manager as a risk. It will be visible as a task for the security role, and the status of that task will actually be tracked through the system as well. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, so I think there's another question which I can see here from Irina, and it talks about, does the NDPR provide for safeguards such as binding corporate rules for the transfer of personal data? The NDPR does not impose the obligation to maintain a record of processing activities on either the controller or the processor. The NDPR does not prescribe a list of information that a data controller or data processor must record for international transfers of personal data. Okay, thanks for that, Irina. I think I'll take that question. So one of the things in which is happening with the NDPR is there's also a supporting document released by NICTA, which is the NDPR implementation framework, and that document also talks about and elaborates one of the things in which organizations need to do, and also as part of that as well, there's an audit questionnaire, and a lot of that questionnaire, when you're completing it, it highlights a lot of what the gaps and what their requirements are. And one of these for organizations to have things like an inventory of processing activities to ensure. So what we have in the NDPR at the moment is still a lot more work in progress. And hopefully when we have the Data Protection Bill of 2020, which is also, as I said earlier on, is being reviewed, things will gradually become clearer. With binding corporate rules, yes, it doesn't mention that, but it mentions using things like contractual clauses, standard contractual clauses. It also has in the framework, there's a list of countries where that the NDPR has been deemed to have adequate data protection in them as well. And of course, one of the things in which and that's also why you need to engage a DPCO, is that the DPCO has access to NICTA, and a lot of these questions also can be where clarity is required, can be gotten. I mean, the initial NDPR document is only like 20 or 30 pages. That's really a small document, but there are other documents in which that's enough as well. I hope that answers your question, Irina. Okay, there's another question here that talks about please discuss likely impact of machine learning and AI and data privacy. What's your views, please? So the impact of machine learning and AI and data privacy. So one of the things in which I can take that because that's an area in which I I love. You see, when it comes to using all these advanced techniques like machine learning and artificial intelligence, and you are processing, and the solutions in which you're building are processing personal data and making prediction based on human beings. The first thing in which an NDPR actually states this is that you need to complete your data privacy impact assessment. So when you complete your data privacy impact assessment, it helps you to highlight some of the possible risks of re-identification, risks of even when you are identifying people wrongly, or you are making decisions, you are automating decisions based on someone, and that person and your algorithm has given the wrong outcome. Another thing that's important when you're making such things is for you to ensure that you imbibe privacy by design. So NDPR mentions privacy by design. It's a concept in which if you introduce it into the way in which you're designing your solution and the principles within privacy by design, it will ensure that the outcome in which you have or your solution will be able to protect the personal data of the people who you are developing your machine learning or AI application for. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you very much, Ade. I hope benefactor got an answer there. And just quick question from Victor. I'm conscious of time here as well. Does DPM have integration with MS Active Directory or SAP? Marian, I don't know if you could shed some light on that, please.
Yeah, if I saw the question, and I think I did, the integration was more related to managing the roles and the users. So we definitely do have integration, which is all compatible. So we can integrate with any type of identity access management platform like Active Directory or Azure Active Directory or similar.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Victor. And a question from Nana. Is the DPM tool to be used to audit the client, or is the client expected to purchase the tool?
I think that's a question for you to answer, Marian. In your best.
I'm confused though.
What I would say, very short, this is not an auditing tool. This is a core management tool connected with the systems of the company. So yes, it is purchased by the customer and then used by the customer, not by the auditor.
Thank you very much, Marian. And another question here from Wale. Seeing it has access to real time. Can it notify of a data access request? That's a question from Wale. Would anybody, Marian, would you like to shed some light on that, please?
Sure. So a subject access request is one of the types of requests that can be handled within DPM. One of the modules of the tool is data subject request management. Yes.
Thank you very much.
From my understanding, it can handle that access in real time, and it can also be configured to route that access to the right person who will be dealing with that request.
Thank you, Ade, and thanks, Marian. And there's one other question here, I believe, from Ellie. Do we have campaigns in place to educate people in Nigeria to understand the value of their data? That's probably a subject in itself. So, Ade, I don't know.
I believe the communication of the value of data, it's something that is progressive, and I agree that there needs to be a lot more focus on educating people and making awareness. But I think a lot of things are going to change when the data protection bill becomes enacted, and we'll start to see a lot more communication. And when we also have our own independent data protection commission, which will be one of the things in which the bill will be set up. Because at the moment, NDPR is the one who is regulating the NDPR. NDPR also have their portfolio is quite wide and it's quite diverse. So once we have an independent data protection commission, that has sole responsibility for managing and overseeing and communicating and engaging the Nigerian public, also showing them the benefits of, because the reason why you're having a commission is to protect the interests of the of Nigerian citizens with regards to their data, their personal data. So communication and making people aware will be one of the key things in which they will be focusing on.
Thank you very much, Ade, and thank you very much, gentlemen, for mine, especially for that demo, and obviously answering the questions. Same thing to Ade and Femi. To basically continue, or more or less go into sort of post roundup, we're doing a number of excellent offers, post webinar offers, of course. We're offering a 14-day free access to Data Privacy Manager. That again, details can be found on that unique link, which you should see on your screen shortly. And please keep an eye out for that as well. We're also offering a 25% discount on the purchase of the software, provided, of course, that is before the end of November. Again, keep an eye out for this. You should be able to see, you should be seeing the link in your screen. Please let me know if you can't see the link. The first link is the one for the 14-day free Data Privacy Manager trial. And there should be, there's a question that's coming from Franklin with regards to pricing around that. Again, details of pricing will be offered to you. Thanks. And I will be endeavoring to share the slides at the end of this presentation. Again, this will be either emailed to yourselves or in the form of a PDF format. So you'll be getting through to that as well. It's been a very stimulating discussion, and we hope we've been able to keep you stimulated. We will be running a number of masterclass webinar series in the future, so please keep an eye out for that. And then we'll be touching on a host of different subjects. Possibly some of the questions raised here, again, will serve as a benchmark for the next presentation. So again, please keep an eye out. Again, take advantage of the 14-day access, free access, of course, to Data Privacy Manager, and obviously the 25% discount on the webinar. And on behalf of myself and Ade, and Femi and Marian, of course, from DataWorks, Maria Consulting, and Data Privacy Manager, I'd like to thank you all for attending this session today, and employ you to obviously look forward to the next session in our masterclass webinar series. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you, everyone. And if you haven't completed your polls, please kindly do so before you go. And I think that's one thing in which it will be good for us to actually share the results of the polls if we can before we leave. So if you haven't done so, just quickly go to polls and answer, and we can just quickly post the results of that so that you can all see.
If I may jump in just quickly, Ade, I almost forgot about our beloved polls. For the first question, which was, as an organization, where do you need help the most? I think the answers was follows: engaging senior stakeholders, starting an NDPR compliance program, engaging with the data protection compliance organization, recruiting a data protection officer, and fixing issues identified after the audit. I think the most standout answer there was starting an NDPR compliance program. That's an interesting perspective. The second one was obviously engaging senior stakeholders. And I think as a third answer, fixing issues identified after the audit. So again, it just shows that where, from an African perspective, probably where the emphasis should be. The first one, of course, naturally would have been started. The context of senior stakeholders is a function of, are there senior stakeholders in place in organizations that would look at this kind of thing as a priority? So that's, again, a takeaway for some of us here. Our second poll is, where is the organization on the NDPR compliance journey? Again, the answers were as follows: not started, appointed a DPCO, completed an NDPR audit, or not applicable. The most standard answer there, surprisingly, was not started. So it means that there's a lot of work to be done on that NDPR compliance journey, and hopefully along the way, in the African context, I hope we're not just starting the journey this time next year. We should have started, and we should be moving forward. The second answer, highest answer, was completed an NDPR audit. It shows at least that there is some movement or traction, but again, a little bit more emphasis. Again, you know, a wider audience might have a different perspective. The third question in our poll was, are you aware of the Data Protection Bill of 2020, which is currently in draft? The answers were again limited here. So yes, no, I need more information. Obviously, the standard answer from this section of the audience that stood out was 58% said that yes, they were aware. But again, I think for me, need more information at the second answer is probably one for concern. Again, it means that either the information out there has not been clearly articulated, or there's a need, obviously, to ensure that there's more awareness created. So I hope that helps in the context of the polls. Apologize for that sort of coming later. But once again, I'd like to thank our panelists, Marian Bratchett, of course, from Data Privacy Manager, Femi Ogundere from Maria Consulting, and of course, Ade Adedeji from DataWorks Analytics. Thank you, panelists, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending our webinar this morning. Thank you.